Even though we had to wait an extra day for Jacob deGrom's spring debut, like always when he pitches, it was worth the wait.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the Texas Rangers, the first and best daily Rangers podcast. I'm Bryce Paddock, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan, covering this team for 11 seasons, including all 6 as the founder and host of this podcast. Thank you all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Paddock. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers. Hit subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment nearly any single thing below. Now, on today's show, we're talking about Jacob deGrom's spring debut, what the plan is for him this season, and a little bit about Wyatt Langford coming back and looking just as good, if not better, than ever. But before we get into all of that, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Now, initially, Jacob deGrom's spring training debut was supposed to be on Friday night against the Colorado Rockies, but rain in the Scottsdale area ruined it, unfortunately. And he got pushed to Saturday. Same with Wyatt Langford. Both of them were supposed to make their debut on Friday night, got pushed to Saturday, and you know what? Everything was just fine and dandy. The only one annoyed by it was me, mainly because Kumar Rocker was supposed to throw in the A game on Saturday, and we would know a little bit more about his progress and get more TrackMan data and things like that on Rocker, but alas, he threw in the B game, an inter-squad game. We'll talk more about that later on in this show and why that was very encouraging. But the most encouraging thing, seeing Jacob deGrom on the mound, again, would have loved for it to be televised. It doesn't seem like his next spring training start will be televised, but that's not nearly as important as Jacob deGrom just being on the mound, being healthy, and looking about as good as he always does. Jacob deGrom is the best pitcher on earth when healthy. I hate that caveat. I'm sure you hate that caveat, but I know who hates it more than either of us. It's Jacob deGrom himself. He has not been healthy for the last 3 seasons, basically since 2020. He has not been healthy. But before that, he was a very healthy, very durable pitcher. And even when he was not healthy, the glimpses that we saw of him on the mound were just unbelievable, and he looked incredible in this start, making some really, really good hitters, including one of the best hitters on the planet, look incredibly terrible. Some truly terrible swings. The worst of the day was by Bobby Witt Jr., one of the best players on the planet, on a slider that was basically in the left-handed hitter's box. It was just that far out of the plate, and Bobby Witt Jr. was swinging through it for one of the 3 strikeouts on the day. Another one he got swinging, another one he got looking on a bit of a generous call, but overall, deGrom looked like deGrom. The one that we know, the one that we idolize, the one that we get so much joy from seeing. Not nearly enough seeing him as we would like. But deGrom is the best pitcher on the planet when healthy. And this year, I think he can just take that caveat off. I'm hoping. That is the goal. He threw 31 pitches in this game, a couple of perfect innings, 3 strikeouts. Yeah, that's right. Perfect innings. And only, I believe once did he even get to a 3-ball count. Mainly throwing the fastball and the slider, threw in a couple of curves, didn't throw any changeups, faced righties, faced lefties. They all looked silly and overmatched against him. The fastball was averaging right at 97 miles an hour, whereas last year in his 3 starts at the big league level, after the rehab, he was averaging 97.3 miles an hour. That was down a little bit, and that's something that I find really interesting. A lot of not actual experts say, oh, well, he's throwing too hard. That's the only reason why he's getting hurt, and that's just not how the arm works. I'm sure it's a factor of him throwing that hard, but you look at his velocities. He talks about maybe sitting more in the 97 range. He thinks maybe that will end up playing a factor of him staying healthy for the full season. I don't know. I mean, when he was averaging 99 miles an hour, that was more of when he was getting hurt. But you go back and look at the velocities on his fastball and how much different it was from year to year. I mean, you look at his rookie year, 2014, averaging 94 with the fastball. Then it jumps up to 95.5 miles an hour in 2015, back down to 94, then up to 95, then up to 96, then up to 97, 98.5, 99 in 2021. And it was right there in 2022 and right around there in 2023 as well. So his fastball velocity is kind of fluctuated a bit, but you want to go back to when he was actually pitching his best. Well, 2021 was really his best. It was when he was doing just obscene stuff. I mean, truly obscene stuff. But you look at the overall body of work, his best year in general. I mean, 2021 pitched in 15 starts, a 1.08 ERA, 92 innings, 146 strikeouts. I mean, he was just unreal. Truly unreal. It didn't seem real what we were watching in 2021. He was just that good. He pitched half a season and he finished top 10 in Cy Young voting because that half a season was some of the best pitching we've ever seen anyone do. And he was only doing it with 3 pitches. Now he seems to be working in that curveball just a little bit more, which, by the way, is also a double plus pitch. His fastball, slider, changeup, all those 80 grade. Top of the scale, best of the freaking best. The curveball, also probably a double plus pitch, which he hasn't really thrown all that much the last couple of years. But I think maybe averaging in that 97 mile an hour range is about where we might see him now. I mean, I think we'll see a little bit more of the curveball. Last year he threw it, 3% of the time. I think we might see more of that. I think we might see him bring the sinker back. But back in 2021, he literally just threw 3 pitches. He just threw the fastball, the slider, and the changeup. And he wasn't really working much on the curveball when he was, rehabbing last year. He kind of threw it in there sparingly. But he's like, when you got 3 80 grade pitches, you don't really particularly need a 4th one, especially if you're only going about 75 pitches, at least at the start of this year. I think that's where he's going to be looking at. His next start is going to be on Thursday. That's probably going to be somewhere between the 40 and 45-ish pitch range. Probably 3, maybe 4 innings. I think probably closer to 3. And then he'll have another week's worth of rest, and then he'll probably pitch against the Guardians on the 18th. By the way, this week we start getting some televised games. If you have either the CW or Victory Plus, or if you have the Rangers Network, I think most of these games are going to be on the CW, at least the first couple. On Wednesday, we will get the first Rangers locally televised game on Victory Plus and CW 33. That'll be against the Reds. Alas, Jacob deGrom's game is on the road, and on Thursday at the Giants, I don't think there's going to be any kind of video broadcast of that game. There was not any video broadcast of the game against the Royals, which was a little annoying and frustrating, but, that's what we got. But basically, after Tuesday, from Wednesday on, every single home Rangers spring training game will be televised. So at this rate, we'll see him again probably on the 18th, Tuesday, against the Guardians. That will be at home. That will be televised. And also, if you're out of market and you have MLB Network, it'll be on there. So that will be very, very nice. And then that would set him up to pitch either the 24th or the 25th. So 3 more games. So 4 total spring games for Jacob deGrom. And then that would get him ready for his debut on the 31st at the very end of the Rangers rotation. And that will be in Cincinnati. But hey, at least get him for hopefully at least 1 televised game, hopefully at least 1 game at home. If he's pitching at home, even if it is a spring training game, even if it is that, game that literally does not matter, I'm sure it will be a packed house. Because if Jacob deGrom is pitching, it doesn't matter where it is. It doesn't matter what the stakes are. It is a sight to behold. And I think this is going to be a great, great year for deGrom and a great year for the Rangers. I mean, the fact that they won it all in 2023 without him is staggering, absolutely staggering. And the fact that they could do it again this year, and, the fact that they could be even better this year with a Jacob deGrom, with hopefully a deeper rotation, with a Nathan Eovaldi, with some young homegrown starters like Cody Bradford, like Kumar Rocker at some point this season, like probably Jack Leiter at some point this season, and other vets like Tyler Mahle and John Gray filling out the rest of this rotation, plus the offense that looks not just as good as 2023, but maybe even better. This could be an incredible year for Jacob deGrom. It could be finally, after 56 6, 8 years of the franchise in Texas. The first time we have a Texas Rangers Cy Young winner. But I don't want to get too ahead of myself just yet. Just the fact that he's pitching, the fact that he's healthy, the fact that he is making these quality of hitters look this incredibly stupid and bad at baseball is just something that brings so much joy to my baseball-loving heart. But another person who brings joy to my baseball-loving heart is Wyatt Langford, who also made his debut this weekend. And why? It only took 2 games for me to say, yeah, I think Wyatt Langford is finally ready for the regular season. Talk about all that and more right after this. This show is brought to you by FanDuel. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks you could use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. We've also got all kinds of baseball odds right now talking about Jacob deGrom. He is the 5th favorite to win the AL Cy Young after Garrett Cole has gone down with injuries, probably not going to pitch this season. A little bit less competition for the AL Cy Young right now at plus 1,600, tied with Pablo Lopez. For those 5th best odds, only people with better odds than deGrom are Tarek Skubal, Garrett Crochet, Cole Reagans, former Ranger great, Logan Gilbert, and he is tied at plus 1,600 with Pablo Lopez for the 5th best odds for the AL Cy Young. So go visit FanDuel.com to get in on college hoops action all tournament long. Shout out to the Everydayers for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. On tomorrow's show, we'll be back and talking a little bit about Adolis Garcia, when the Rangers should expect him back, and why there's been a little bit of concern with the results he's put up in spring training so far. But Jacob deGrom wasn't the only one to make his spring training debut this weekend. We also got to see Wyatt Langford in action for the first time in the Cactus League, and Wyatt Langford jumped right back into the thick of things, and basically every ball he's hit, almost every, except for one that he's put in play, has been a hard hit ball. Jumps back in that first game, goes 1 for 2 with a walk, including a very hard hit single. He also had a ground out. The single was 97.6 miles an hour off the bat. The ground out was 101.4 miles an hour off the bat. Then in his second game, he has a little weak ground out. That first plate appearance, 86.9 miles an hour off the bat. Then follows that up in the 4th inning with a single, 103 off the bat. And then in the 6th inning, his final plate appearance of the day, 112.3 mile per hour line drive. He also had a fast swing on that single, 78 miles an hour. With that swing, 75 miles an hour is the fast swing threshold. Even that line out should have been probably a hit or at least a double, but a spectacular defensive play is what ended up keeping that from being a hit or an extra base hit. It really didn't take long. Also, by the way, that walk was an 8-pitch plate appearance. I mean, the dude looks absolutely locked in. Usually for hitters, it doesn't take them that long to get locked in spring training. And, well, we did see a pretty great spring training from Wyatt Langford last year. He was healthy the entirety of spring training, didn't have any oblique issues that kept him out like this year in spring training. But here we are. We've got a couple of weeks left of runway for Wyatt Langford to finally ramp up and not just be in baseball activities, but be in actual baseball games. I am just so excited for Wyatt Langford in this season, seeing what he's going to do in year 2. This is going to be, I think, a pretty big year for Langford. We saw him struggle a bit early on, but again, remembering how little baseball this guy has played from the time that he graduated high school to the time that he made his big league debut as a 22-year-old with right at, I think, 200 plate appearances in the minor leagues, and also really only 2 full seasons of collegiate ball, because his freshman year, he was a catcher who didn't really even play, and he just broke onto the scene his sophomore year and got even better his junior year. I mean, this guy's improvement is just so staggering, and the fact that he just jumps into a game and, the second game out hits a ball 112 miles an hour, which I think might be harder than he hit a ball all last year. It's kind of close, but not a whole lot, not as much hard contact as you would, expect to see from Wyatt for a guy who just puts up, his crazy raw power. I think his, that is harder than any ball that he hit last year. 111.9 miles an hour was his max exit velocity last year. That's something that I think we'll see more of from Langford this year, is not only hard contact, but, extra base hits. I mean, last year was not a bad year for him in terms of his, overall, output. Is still basically a 4-WAR season his first year in the big leagues at 3.9, if you want to get particular about it. I mean, he only played in 134 games. He missed a little bit of time, only had 16 home runs. It felt like a little bit more. He had 25 doubles, 4 triples, and I think we'll see probably more of that. I think we'll probably see a whole lot more hard contact. I think we'll see much better plate appearances from him. I mean, he had quality at-bats, quality appearances, but for the first couple of months of the season, it kind of felt a little bit like he was fighting for his life, just trying to survive, not really going in, knowing exactly what he wanted to do. I mean, he had a good eye for the plate, and he was making good swing decisions, but it felt more like he was battling from behind in a lot of different counts, a lot of different at-bats early on in the season. Still had a lot of moments of magic, and I still think we'll have even more moments of magic from Langford, but I don't think he'll be nearly as overwhelmed or, have, things blowing by him pretty quickly. He won't be learning as much this year, and so I'm not really worried particularly about his sophomore slump from Langford, because he got the slumping out the first couple of months of the season, and the last month of the season he just looked absolutely unstoppable. Now, I'm not thinking he's going to hit over 300 for the full year with an OPS 4 points shy of 1,000 for the entire year, and have around a 40 home run season, which he would have been on pace for if he did what he did in September for an entire season. That'd be sick. That'd be awesome. It'd probably be like a 7-8 WAR season and maybe even an MVP season for Wyatt Langford, but I think we're going to see quite a bit of goodness from Wyatt Langford this year, along with the rest of this lineup. I mean, we're seeing great plate appearances from Josh Young, from Jake Berger, from Kevin Pillar, who I've gone back and forth on. I think might end up making this Rangers opening day roster because of what he brings, not just defensively, but mainly offensively, of just being a guy who mashes lefties. Langford is also going to be a guy who absolutely crushes it against left-handed pitching, along with Josh Young. I mean, having this lineup be this deep and this dangerous, and seeing these quality at-bats, quality plate appearances from Wyatt Langford, seeing Jock Peterson slot in there and just absolutely destroy some baseballs, seeing pitchers already scared of pitching Corey Seager, even in spring training, having him work a couple of walks is nice to see. I mean, Seager's overall spring training numbers haven't been particularly pretty, but he's still getting into his rhythm. You still see him putting up these crazy high exit velocities like we always see from Corey Seager. So I'm not particularly worried about that. And also seeing some quality at-bats from the guy who is fighting for his roster spot life in Leody Taveras. I mean, he hit his 3rd home run of the spring this weekend, and he's been putting up some really, really high exit velocities. I know the batting average, you look at that for what he's been doing in spring training. Again, if you're looking at spring training batting average, you're not getting the full picture, but Leody has been consistently putting up these incredibly high exit velocities, 103 miles an hour, 104 miles an hour, 106.4 miles an hour on the home run that he hit this weekend against the Royals. I mean, this guy has been hitting the baseball incredibly hard. The Rangers have been playing him in more positions in the outfield. Again, I don't think they really need to do that, because if he's playing, he should probably be playing center field. He should probably be playing the field. I don't think we'll see him that much in left field or right field in games. I don't think we should, because, again, most of Leody Taveras' value is what he brings defensively, and defensively he is best and probably the best option in center field for the Rangers. But he's been putting up some quality at-bats there. I mean, he's in a real roster spot battle for that one of those final spots. Maybe Zeke Duran will be the one who ends up getting squeezed out. There's no way in heck Josh Smith gets optioned anywhere. I don't think he even has any minor league options at this point. And, with what Kevin Pillar has been doing this spring, he's been hitting incredibly well. He's been playing decent defense. He's been crushing those lefties. That is a valuable type of a player, and I'm really glad that he didn't end up actually retiring, because this is a guy who the Rangers don't have anybody in the minor leagues who could just jump right up and play that kind of a role. And Dustin Harris could maybe be that 4th outfielder. Maybe Alejandro Ozuna could be that kind of a role at some point this year. But both those guys hit left-handed, and don't necessarily hit lefties particularly well. They hit them all right, but not anywhere near the level that we've seen from Kevin Pillar, not just in spring training, but mainly for the entirety of his career. So I'm excited to see what this offense can do. I'm really excited for the second year of Wyatt Langford. And I'm also excited to see what we're going to get out of Kumar Rocker this season, who hasn't had the best spring, but with a couple of tweaks has been looking much, much better. We're going to talk about that and Nathan Eovaldi right after this. Now, the Rangers played a couple of games this weekend, one of which they won, one of which they got absolutely obliterated by the Diamondbacks. It seems like that Diamondbacks offense is still going to be really, really good, even without Jock Peterson. Again, this is spring training, and again, two of the guys that gave up 10 of the 14 runs that the Rangers gave up on Sunday are not going to be part of this big league roster, but 4 of those runs were given up by Nathan Eovaldi. Went 4 innings, threw 75 pitches in this one, 4 strikeouts, a couple of walks, little concerning, not very Nathan Eovaldi-like, 4 hits, including a home run. Nathan Eovaldi has a 7 ERA. Does that mean he's losing his opening day roster spot? No. Let's not go that silly in this one, but there was a little bit of concern with what I saw from Nathan Eovaldi in this one, mainly just because of the fastball velocity. I think he's still definitely working that velocity up. I won't be really too concerned unless we get to his final spring training start and he's still in the 94-ish mile an hour range in terms of the average fastball velocity. But one thing that I really loved that I saw from Nathan Eovaldi at this start was the curveball. Curveball was very much working for him in this one. He was using it a little bit more often than he did last season. The curveball just wasn't that effective of a pitch for him last season during the regular season. Same with the slider. It wasn't, all that effective, a little bit below average. But in this game, he looked incredible with that curveball, throwing 14 of them, getting 9 swings. 7 of those are swings and misses. Also got a called strike with the curveball. A lot of chasing out of the zone. Through 36% of them in the zone, and more than half the time hitters were chasing, swinging and missing outside of the zone, so they were not seeing that curveball very, very well. Also through the slider, got 7 swings and misses out of the 9 swings that they took on that curveball. 7 swings and misses on a pitch he only threw 14 times. That is an exceptional rate. He also got 4 swings and misses on 9 swings on the splitter, but through 24 four-seam fastballs that average 94 miles an hour. That's a mile and a half an hour down from where he was last year. Not exactly what you're hoping for. With the Eovaldi, when that velocity starts to dip down that much more, it makes everything a little bit worse. It makes the splitter a little bit less effective. It makes the fastball less effective. It makes the curveball, cutter, slider, all of those pitches less effective. We've seen him, when he's at his best, use that velocity somewhere in the 95, 96. Even if he's in the 97 mile an hour range in terms of the average velocity, if he can get up there to 97, 98, 99, I don't know that we're going to see it all that much this year. And eventually, that velocity does start to tick down in your middle to old age. He's 35. This is his age 35 season. I think he actually just turned 35 a couple weeks ago. Yeah, back in February on the 13th. He's getting a little bit up there, and eventually you start to have to learn how to pitch a little bit differently when you don't have that fastball velocity in there in the upper 90s, when you don't have some of the break on your curveball, your slider, and things like that. He's started to rework kind of his pitch arsenal in terms of just how often he's throwing things, becoming less reliant on that four-seam fastball, throwing the splitter a whole lot more often last year than he did in years past. I mean, it was up there as not quite his most used pitch, but towards the end of the season, there were quite a few starts where he threw the splitter more often than he threw the fastball. It's an interesting way to pitch. It's a different way to pitch, and it was an effective way to pitch for Nathan Eovaldi because his splitter is so incredibly good. In terms of the off-speed run value, he's in the top 10% of baseball in terms of the effectiveness of that splitter versus all the other off-speed pitches, changeup, splitters, forkballs, and things of that nature. It was one of the best. And the fastball, while it was averaging 95.5 miles an hour last year, it's still in the process of ramping up now. I mean, he's definitely a veteran. He's got 75 pitches at that 75 pitch mark. I'm sure the next time out he'll be somewhere in the 85, maybe 90-ish pitch mark, and he should be well ramped up to 100 by the time it hits opening day, which Rangers still have an outright come out and said, oh, it's Nathan Eovaldi, but they've just hinted at it in really silly and cheeky ways. I just wish they'd go ahead and say it. Everybody knows. Everybody knows. Just go say it. Just say it, Bochy. Just say it. Please. Enough of this beating around the bush nonsense. It was going to be Jacob deGrom or it was going to be Nathan Eovaldi. Unless you want to get really weird and just say, actually, by the way, it's John Gray. Surprise. What a weird thing to do. I don't think that's going to happen unless there is some sort of injury setback or thing like that with Nathan Eovaldi, which I'm not anticipating. I'm really hoping, knock on wood, that we are not going to see that from Nathan Eovaldi or anybody on the starting pitching staff. But I think that just for him, I don't remember exactly the velocity ramp-up kind of process from last year, but I'm thinking this is just kind of how his process works. We'll get the pitch count up, and once he gets to that 100 pitch mark, then he can start letting it loose just a little bit more. Because, again, he doesn't need to have the most effective results and things in spring training. It's just about tinkering and finding that command and finding, the feel for everything. And then once you get into games that matter, then you start to ramp up the velocity. Then you can start to see it, go up into the 95, 96, 97 miles an hour. But there's no need for Eovaldi to start ramping up to 97, 98 miles an hour in some spring games that don't even matter. They don't. They just don't. But seeing him get some more effectiveness out of that curveball, if he starts using that a little bit more this year, start seeing the cutter a little bit more effective this year, maybe even the slider. The slider has not been a great pitch for him. The cutter is usually a little bit better of a version for that. But if the curveball can start getting back to being a plus pitch, even if he loses maybe half a tick or a full mile-an-hour velocity on that four-seam fastball, I think that he can definitely find some ways to still be a very, very effective pitcher because he's such a smart pitcher, such a heady pitcher, and, really game plans incredibly well and knows his body well, knows what he can and can't do, and that is the mark of a great, great pitcher. But a guy who's also still tinkering with some things, still not having the most effective outings in spring training is Kumar Rocker. He has had a couple of rough outings, gone an inning in both of his spring training outings and allowed full runs in each of them. And some people saw that and thought, oh my gosh, is Rocker bad now? Is that what's going on here? No, not really. I was really impressed with especially that first game. We actually had some StatCast data. We could see how much he was living on the edges of the zone, and he just got beat by a couple of four-seam fastballs, catching a little bit too much of the plate. He was using the four-seam fastball a little bit more than I would like. I wish he would just tone that down and start using the sinker more. He's talked about wanting to use that two-seamer sinker a little bit more because it's just a better pitch at this point. It's a better version of his fastball. It's got more movement. It's still got the same velocity, and he can still command it pretty well as well. But one of the things that he said was leading to him catching too much of the plate, catching some inconsistency with that breaking ball, that rock ball, curveball, slider, whatever you actually want to call it. He just wasn't quite in sync with his mechanics, and Chris Young said the same thing. Chris Young was kind of reminiscing in this article written by Kennedy Landry about one of his first spring trainings, actually his first spring training in San Diego, back when Bruce Bochy was his manager. He just could not get anybody out. His mechanics were just off, and he thought, oh, is Bruce Bochy going to send me down to the minor leagues? Well, Rocker might end up in the minor leagues to start the season, but he has been tinkering with his command, with his mechanics. More specifically, the upper and lower halves weren't quite completely synced. Just milliseconds off is what Chris Young said about his mechanics, which last year were incredible. When he was first drafted, he was still working on revamping that delivery. The Rangers were almost completely overhauling what he looked like. It was just kind of a mess. He was throwing, not much with his lower half. He was throwing a lot with his shoulder. And Grant Schiller and I on this podcast, after watching what he did in the Arizona Fall League right after the Rangers drafted him, we're like, oh boy, what is going on there? He was really struggling with command. Then he came back in the spring of that year and looked a lot better before Tommy John surgery. And then when he came back from Tommy John surgery this past year, the mechanics were impeccable. He was throwing it looked exactly the same. Every single one of those pitches, every single pitch that he was throwing, the delivery was clean, it was repeatable, it looked incredibly effective and efficient. It looked like something that could keep him healthy and effective for a long time, but he's still, revamped that delivery. And so getting all of that down. He only threw less than 50 innings last year, so getting back and getting a feel for it takes a little bit of time. I'm glad that he had a normal offseason. He comes back into camp, and he's still looking pretty nasty with some of that stuff. The effectiveness wasn't quite there in his first couple of starts, just couldn't quite get some calls. Also couldn't quite hit his spots as well as he wanted to, but he did pitch again on Saturday. Instead of seeing him in a game with some StatCasts, he just pitched in an intra-squad game, going 3 innings of no-hit ball, got a couple of strikeouts, also walked a batter, also hit a batter, but just felt and looked much more effective, much more under control. He said, my mechanics were just a little bit out of whack, and so now hopefully those mechanics are back in whack and make opposing hitters in the box look whack. We're trying. It's spring training for everybody, including podcasters, but I'm excited to see what Rocker looks like in his next outing. If we're going to see that in an A game, I would very much hope so. I would also prefer it to be a game with some cameras, which we'll get a little bit this week. I'm excited to see what we're going to get from Rocker, how much they're going to build him up, how many pitches he is going to throw, and what the kind of a plan is for him and deGrom this year in terms of just the innings limit of how many games are they pitching, how many pitches are they throwing, how many innings are they throwing in each of those games. I would imagine they're a little bit more conservative with Rocker and how much he's throwing, just because he is so much younger, and because he has fewer innings on his arm, just trying to preserve the health of Rocker as much as they can and the effectiveness. Just making sure that he is really, really ready for the big leagues once he gets up here. I don't think he's that far off. I honestly don't think he's that far off of being one of the Rangers, not just top 5 starting pitchers, but top 3 starting pitchers even. I think it'd take quite a bit for him to surpass, Cody Bradford, or maybe even, I definitely don't think he's going to surpass what Nathan Eovaldi is going to be doing this year, but I wouldn't be surprised if he gets all the way to some point in the season he's Rangers number 3 starter, or if he's not, then maybe Jack Leiter is jumping into that role. I'm really excited to see what Leiter's done this offseason, or what we'll see him do in this regular season. I'm excited to see what we're going to get out of Rocker this year, and this has been a good spring for Leiter, not as much for Rocker, but Rocker I've seen have more success pitching in games that actually matter than I've seen for Leiter. But I think both of them have incredibly bright futures, and I'm really stoked to see what they're going to bring the Texas Rangers this year, as well as what Jacob deGrom is going to bring this year, as hopefully not just the best pitcher on earth when healthy, but just the best pitcher on earth. That's going to do it for today's show. Thank you all so much for listening and subscribing, and until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.